cookiers or new cookiers. Welcome to Piping 101. This is Celia Strickland. I'm the owner of Sweets from the Soul, and today I want to show you some techniques for piping on cookies. You always want to practice first before you begin with cookies because piping can be a little tricky, but as you practice and learn how to use your royal icing, it will become more easier. I have the piping practice page that either came in your cookie kit or is available through your downloads that you received or with the link that's on YouTube. I have mine under a piece of acetate, but you can also put it in a page protector or under a piece of saran wrap even. And then I have mine weighted down with some magnets. They're not sticking to anything, they're just being used for weights. I also have a bag of piping consistency royal icing and a bag of flood consistency royal icing. And then I also have a damp paper towel so that I can always wipe off anything and start over and practice again. So let's start by just making some straight lines. I'm going to take my bag with the seam up, and I am just going to cut off a very small amount of the bag. Start as far down as you can to just practice to see where that line is going to be and how thick it's going to be, and then you can adjust it. And that line is just right. I just cut off a very small amount. All right, so let's talk about how to go about piping. When you're piping straight lines, you want to hold the bag with your dominant hand and just kind of support it with your other hand. This is the way I do it. Some people put their hand under, whatever you feel comfortable doing. You're going to touch down to the cookie, and then as you squeeze an even pressure, you're going to pick up and just let that line fall right along where you want it to be, and then touch down again. Let me show you that. When you're applying pressure, you want to start squeezing, and when you get close to the end of your line, you want to release the pressure. So let's touch down, pick up, let the line just fall as it may, and when you get to the end, touch back down. Now let's see the difference between that and just dragging our bag along. You see how crooked that is? I'm having a really hard time just even keeping it straight. Our lines are much more defined when we pull it along. All right, let's try a longer line. Remember, you have to keep even pressure as you go. So I'm going to touch down, pull up, and just let that line fall where I want it to be. And then come back down and touch down. Touch down, pull up, and let it fall where it may. Now, you noticed here I almost dropped the line. It almost broke on me, and that will happen even to someone that's been doing it a while. Just come back in and kind of fill that in, and then take your scribe and just touch it down until it melts down into the rest of your line. And there you go, you fixed it. Not a problem. All right, this line is very long, and you may come across, especially when you're down here doing your circles, where you have to do a line that's uninterrupted for a long time. So let's practice that. We've got to keep that pressure going the whole time. So we're going to squeeze, pick up, keep going, keep going, keep that pressure, keep that pressure, keep that pressure, and then touch down at the end. And that's your line. Now pause the video and practice just that section for a while and see how you do with that. Remember, you can always wipe it off with your paper towel and start over again. So go ahead and pause the video, and I'll see you back in just a minute. All right, how did that go? I'm sure you did well. I also wanted to point out that I do have my practice paper tilted, and you can do that same thing with your cookie. You know, when you're writing on a piece of paper at school or doing something at your desk at work, you're not normally straight up and down. Notice how I'm keeping my hand over to the side and not trying to do it straight up and down. So you make it where you can do it most comfortably. All right, now from time to time you may come across something that's a little bit more intricate. So you're going to do the exact same thing. Touch down and watch where your bag needs to go. Always applying that pressure. Always keeping your eye where you're going and not so much what that line is doing. And if you need to stop in between, that's okay. Just touch down and then take your scribe, fix your dot where it's not quite so noticeable, and then just begin again, always keeping your tip clean and ready to go in that seam up. All right, and let's just keep going. And we're pressing, steady pressure, letting that line fall just where it needs to go. Steady pressure until you get to the end. And there you go. And then you can always come back to use your scribe to clean up any areas that need to be fixed. All right. Remember, with piping consistency icing, this is about the consistency of a thick toothpaste. You don't want it too thin because you want these lines to sit up above your cookie. You're going to be using this kind of icing to make details on your cookie. All right, let's try the more intricate one. This one has a lot of curves. So again, touch down and just let that icing fall right along that line. Are you going to be perfect? No. We are not perfect animals. But we are going to do our very best. And of course, practice makes perfect. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Now, if you happen to fall off where you are or you need to be and it's not quite on the line, take your scribe, wipe it off, and then just start again. It's not a problem. The art of cookie decorating has a lot to do with concealment. When you make a mistake, you can always fix it by putting something pretty on top of it, like a heart or a doodad or some kind of embellishment. And we just keep going until we get to the very end, and then we touch back down. And there's our curved line. Again, we take our scribe and we fix any areas that might be noticeable. Now again, don't have to go for perfection. All right, in most of our cookie decorations, sometimes we have some straight lines that curve, and they'll go from side to side. Again, you're going to start with whatever is your dominant hand, and you're just going to touch down, pick up, and touch down. And if the line breaks, that's okay. Go back, fill it in, take your scribe, touch it a little bit, and it's just like it never happened. All right, and then from on this side, since I'm right-handed, I'm going to start at the bottom and pull up. Start at the bottom and pull up. All right. And like if you're doing an ice cream cone, for example, and you're doing the crisscross that's on an ice cream cone, that pattern is nothing more than just the same lines that we just made. So I'm going to do all of my lines that come up first. And notice how that broke right there. But that's okay because I'm going to be coming back over it with my other line coming down. And watch how I can conceal that. Boom, it's gone. All right, and one more line. I think my camera shut off in the middle of it, but that's okay. And again, we're done. Take your scribe, clean up any points that may be sticking up on the ends of your lines. You don't want those little points sticking up on your cookie. You don't want them sticking up in your practice. Just tap it and it will melt on down into your icing. And there you have it. Go ahead and pause the video and let's do some practice. And when you feel like you have those down, come back to me and we'll learn how to make hearts. Perhaps one of the easiest but most beautiful embellishment you can add to a cookie is a heart. And it is nothing more than 2 teardrops put together. Maybe you're doing a cookie with a cloud and you want some raindrops. Let's practice that. Again, I have my stiff consistency icing, my piping icing, so it's going to hold that shape quite well. I'm going to start, let me see if I can do it where you can see it. And I'm just going to touch down. I'm not picking up my bag on these. I'm going to touch down and I'm going to apply pressure, apply pressure, apply pressure, let off and bring it down. Take your scribe and bring it down to a point. Again, pressure, 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 release and pull down. Pressure, 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 release and pull down. You're kind of holding it in place, letting that icing build up before you move your bag. Pressure, 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 fill it in, bring it down. Now, this is one where you're going to be going up. So I'm going to pull my arm around this way and do it just the opposite. Pressure, 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 pull up. Always cleaning off the tip of your bag. Pressure, 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 and pull up. Pressure, 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 and pull up. And one more time, hold that pressure, build it up, and pull up. You can always take your scribe and come back and clean up any tips that might be sticking up in the air. When we're making those hearts, sometimes they don't come out exactly right, but our scribe is always good to use for that, to clean it up. All right, now that we have those two skills, let's do a heart. Clean the tip of your bag off. Turn it to where you're going to have that nice round point with your seam up. Pressure, 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 pull down. Turn your hand just a little. Pressure, 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 pull down. Take your scribe and clean up the tail of your heart. And you can tell that if you have that stiff consistency icing, it's going to form a beautiful heart. All right, let's do it again. Pressure, 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 pull down. Turn your hand just a little. Pressure, 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 pull down. And you can see that one's not as pretty as the other one, but look at what I can do. I can take my scribe and with just a couple little taps, I fixed it. All right, it kind of looks better than the other one. Clean off your bag, give it full pressure, release, full pressure, release, and clean up your tails. And there we have it. All right, pause the video and practice making your hearts. I think this will probably be the best ones that you have. And we'll be right back. Okay, let's practice outlining and flooding an actual cookie. When you are getting ready to pipe on the cookie, you want to lay down an outline to use as sort of a dam to keep the icing within the borders of the cookie, especially when you're brand new at it, because sometimes the icing will just flow right over the side. So let's practice in the same manner. We're going to make sure your seam is up so that it gives that nice round bead. We're going to start just as we did before, touching down, going very slowly, even pressure, all the way around the cookie. Now your cookie may not be round, it may be square, or it may have angles, but this is good practice to start with. Always take your scribe, tap down anything that might be laying up, And we're going to let that dry for just a minute and go ahead and outline the other two. Doing the same thing, touch down, pull your bag up, and just let that icing fall where that line is, keeping your eye ahead of the line, and you'll always come back to the exact same spot. It may not be exactly on there, but when you flood that cookie, the flood or the icing is going to do all the work. It will, if it's the right consistency, the consistency of a thick glue, it will just cover that cookie beautifully and you won't have to worry about it. All right, so there's our outline. Now we're going to take our flood consistency icing and we are going to do the exact same thing as before. We're going to take our piping bag on the seam side up and we're going to cut just a little bit more off than we did before. And let's just kind of use that up here and see how much is coming out. Yeah, that's good. It's going to come out really well. Now, in the same way that we did before, we want to do the bump and go. We're going to bump right up next to that flood. Next to that outline, and we're going to go around the cookie, just laying that icing down. Notice how it's just settling down right next to the cookie. Right next to the outline. Then we're going to keep going, keeping our lines right next to each other. Consistent pressure. Don't want to overfill, don't want to underfill. That's where practice comes in. And if our consistency is correct, there won't be hardly any cleanup to do. Now, if you have let your icing sit before you bagged it into the piping bags, all those bubbles will be gone and you won't even have an air bubble come up. But if you do, you can always take your scribe and pop those air bubbles. All right, and I'm going to tap this down. This seems a little high right here, so all I have to do with my scribe is tap it down. All right, let's try again on the next one. Starting right next to the outline, you're going to notice that it's coming out much more quickly than it did with our flood because we cut our hole just a little bit bigger. You don't want it too big because it will come out very quickly if you do it that way. And you just want to keep going. You don't have to go around and around. You can go back and forth. That is up to you. All right. So we have some vacant areas here, so I can take my scribe and just pull it over into that area, just like that, until I make sure that it has covered every part of the cookie and there's not any high places, especially when we're going to be using a stencil, because that high place will be hard to apply the stencil to. All right, and there we go. And then one more time, simply bump up against the outline, following it all the way around. Our bag is not up against the cookie, but it's not too far off of the cookie either. Again, that flood consistency icing is about the consistency of thick glue. We say it's a 15-second consistency, and what that means is that we can take a knife and draw it through the icing, and it will take about 15 seconds for it to settle back down into a smooth finish. And if you have it at that point, it will be perfect every time. All right, and so there's our practice. I want you just to practice before you start on your cookies. That way you will have more success. You won't be frustrated. If you find that your icing is too thick or too thin, take it out and bag it over again. If it's too thick, you just add a drop of water at a time until it becomes a little bit looser. You don't want it too loose. If it's too thin, you can always add more confectioner's sugar or add some more of your icing from your batch of icing that you made. I always keep a little bit out and that is not colored and just keep that out in case I do get a flood that's too thin. Then I can just add a little bit more of that thicker consistency to it. Anyway, I hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you for watching today, and just keep practicing. Bye-bye.